who struck again? The lovely, 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 lovely elected politicians up on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. So while we've been covering topics such as impeachment, Biden, Trump, all this stuff you keep hearing about all over the mainstream media, and that's kind of been a lot of people's focus, that and of course debates and candidates, that's sort of taken the forefront here on what everyone's talking about. Mainstream media, YouTubers such as myself and other channels that cover things like this. That's more or less been the focal point, okay? And right underneath our noses today, Congress and the House of Representatives have passed legislation extending the Patriot Act. Yeah, the same Patriot Act that came in under George Bush after 9/11, that same Patriot Act. So I want to read an article here real quick, and then we'll discuss even further about just exactly what are the problems with this and what does this mean. It may seem to many Americans that Washington is entirely consumed by the impeachment inquiry and that no other important business is getting done on Capitol Hill. But Tuesday, in a break from televised hearings, the House of Representatives voted to fund the government through December 20th. If passed by the Senate, the continuing resolution would prevent a government shutdown and forestall debate about border wall funding. That's all well and good, except that Democratic leaders had slipped something else into the bill: a 3-month extension of the Patriot Act. So the Democratic leaders slipped this in there, by the way. Okay, just let that sink in for a moment. The post-9/11 law that gave federal government sweeping surveillance and search powers and circumvented traditional law enforcement rules. Key provisions of the Patriot Act were set to expire on December 15th, including Section 215, the legal underpinning of the call details records program exposed in the very first Edward Snowden leak. Now, of course, we all know that they supposedly did reforms on the whole, leak that Edward Snowden leaked out about how they can monitor your phone calls. They were supposed to reform that. Snowden even praised it, but for God's sakes, who are we talking about here? We're talking about the federal government and the intelligence agency. And we're just supposed to take their word at face value that they're not secretly doing this behind the scene. Yeah, we're supposed to take the word of the people who were already mostly doing all this stuff behind our back without our knowledge for years and years and years until someone like Edward Snowden exposed them. Yeah, that's so trustworthy. I mean, how could you ever go wrong believing people like that? Quote, "It's surreal," end quote. Representative Justin Amash told me on Tuesday. Just before the vote, Amash, an independent who left the Republican Party over his opposition to President Trump, pointed to the hypocrisy on both sides of the aisle. Republicans have, quote, "decreed FISA abuse," end quote, against the president and his aides, he said, referring to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And Democrats have highlighted Trump's abuse of his executive powers, yet they are teaming up to extend the administration's authority to warrantlessly gather data on Americans. By tucking the measure into a must-pass bill, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi forced many members who oppose the Patriot Act to vote in favor of its extension. Although I do have serious concerns with reauthorizing Section 125, Representative Bobby Rush of Illinois told The Hill, quote, "We must focus on the bigger picture here," end quote. In late October, Rush signed a letter co-authored by Representatives Rashida Tlaib and Earl Blumenauer, I hope I said his name correct, which read, quote, We will not support any legislation that extends Section 215's sunset date if it fails to contain robust reforms that protect innocent people from unjust surveillance. On Monday night, Amash submitted an amendment to strip the Patriot Act language from the budget bill, but the amendment was blocked by the Democrats on the Rules Committee. Just 10 Democrats defied the leadership to vote against the resolution, including Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, and Ilhan Omar, aka the Squad. I cannot in good conscience vote in favor of a continuing resolution that reauthorizes an unconstitutional mass surveillance authorities, Tlaib told me, especially under a president who has retweeted images of his opponents jailed and suggests anyone who disagrees with him is a criminal. AOC tweeted before the vote, "Yeah, that's gonna be a big no for me, dog." So what's the big takeaway from all this now? Well, let's just start with this. First of all, as some of you know, when I've covered AOC and others on my channel, unlike some of the people who I watch, I don't really have that much confidence in the Squad. And I'm not trying to run anyone off by saying that's just a view of mine. I feel like in theory, they kind of have good goals, but I feel like sometimes they pop off at the mouth in ways that people have criticized Trump for making such, rash comments without thinking them through and thinking just what he's actually saying and how it's impacting his narrative, perhaps. I feel like AOC's done that. I definitely think that Ilhan Omar has done that a couple of times, and Rashida Tlaib. Okay, so that's 3 of your 4 right there. But that aside, on this particular issue, hands down, man, I agree with them. I agree with them. The Patriot Act was nothing but an excuse to start stripping people of their constitutional rights and attacking the Bill of Rights. And government has been coming after the Bill of Rights for some time. This is why I'm arguing so strongly to not buy into the mainstream media's fear-mongering that they're trying to get people to believe over the Second Amendment, because they've already used that tactic to get you to believe you should have given up your Fourth Amendment right to unwarranted search and seizure so they could protect you. So they could protect you, they could protect your children, they could protect... Okay, so here's my whole problem with that. They started stripping you of your Fourth Amendment right on those grounds that we, the federal government, will protect you. We, the federal government, will make sure you're okay. We, the federal government, will make sure your children are okay when they go to school. And how the hell is that working out right about now? Because it seems to me people are still dying. People are getting gunned down. But what are they blaming it on? Wait a minute. I thought all this spying on the American people and all this mass surveillance was supposed to protect my ass. How come I still have this danger? How come if I have a kid one day and send him to school, some nut can run up and, wait a minute, you're spying on their phone calls. You're spying on their activities, basically. Why aren't you stopping this stuff? And then we look at some of these shooters. Take the Orlando nightclub shooter, was on a watch list. On a watch list, and he's still got to carry this out. Now, how does that work? See, this is why I'm saying that they're blaming it on, all these guns, the loose background checks. Now, I agree, background checks can be tightened up. I have no qualms with that whatsoever. But they're using the same tactic. They started stripping part of your rights away, and it changed not a damn thing. And now, the solution to that lack of change is to take more of the frickin' rights away. You know what they say about people who continue to do the same thing over and over and over and expect different results? It's called insanity. And that's what this is, insanity. If you think that allowing the government to strip your rights away is somehow going to have a different outcome than when they stripped your rights away in the past, you're a freaking idiot. Period. And I'm not saying that to try to run someone watching this video off. I'm trying to wake you up out there for any of you who don't already see what's going on. And these Democrats who have been pushing the whole thing against the Second Amendment, and now they're wanting to push this thing through to keep taking your Fourth Amendment rights away. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Republicans are, God-given saints. No, they're not. The Republicans aren't saints on this issue either. They may have been most of the people who voted against it, but guess what? I'm pretty sure that all this came about underneath a Republican president named George Bush. And now, I want you to think about this also, okay? Another big thing that Democrats have been railing on in the last few years is that Trump is a threat to our democracy. Trump is a threat to this country. Trump is just a big threat. They've got all these different ways of framing it, all these different ways of wording it. That's their general message. That's what they want to push out there to the American public. And then they get their talking heads in the corporate media to spread that message for them, to spread that narrative out there. And what do we get as a result of all that? Them stripping our rights away. Them passing extensions on bills that come after your Bill of Rights. Okay? So let's just break down. Take Nancy Pelosi here, since she's the leader and the speaker of the Democrats in the House, okay? What's her history exactly when it comes to the Bill of Rights? So again, she's for the Patriot Act. She was the driving force, apparently. She was part of the leadership that wanted to slip this in and extend it, okay? So she was the driving force behind that, okay? So she was for the Patriot Act. That came after your Fourth Amendment, right? Okay? She's also been coming after the guns for many years and wanting to, heavily restrict what people are allowed to buy. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be some restrictions. I mean, of course. But, the gun reform tactics, I know people want to argue me on this issue. Oh, well, crime goes down, blah, 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 blah. It's the gun crimes that go down, but not really the violent crime that goes down. Take Europe, for example. The country that has the least violent crime is the country that has the most access to guns. Now, you could say that they also require you to do so much time of military service, but of course that country is Switzerland, and they require that military service, which you may say, since they haven't been in a war in how long, you don't have to worry about that aspect, but, for men, it gets them in the military, trains them up, toughens them up, and maybe makes them a little more responsible, but which I'm not advocating a system like that anyway. I think if you want to join the military, that should be your choice. That's something that's just not cut out for everyone. People are chose, to serve or have a desire to serve, and it's something that they genuinely want to do because they feel the need to do it. I applaud them and respect them 100% to do it, but I don't think it's something that should be forced upon people. I'm not a person who believes in forcing things upon someone else, okay? And that goes for military service, religion, and whatnot. But nonetheless, she was in favor of the Patriot Act. That went after the Fourth Amendment. She's also been pushing, taking away all these different guns off the streets, blah, 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 which it's not going to have the outcome that they act like it's going to have, pure and simple. Half the people who've gotten these guns didn't exactly, some got them legally, some didn't. There's still too many, black market dealings going on out there, especially when this country is the largest arms dealer in the world. We sell them to countries who then put them on the black market. Doesn't that just make a hell of a lot of sense? Okay? So she's not really a good, standard bearer for your Second Amendment. Okay? When the CIA was torturing people, waterboarding and whatnot, okay? Now, even though these people were not American citizens, we all know in the Bill of Rights you're protected against cruel and unusual punishment. And yet, Pelosi apparently got some wind about this, and it took her quite a while to act. And there were some questions raised about how long did she know? How long did she know? So that means, even if it wasn't an American citizen, it's American CIA carrying out torture, and she didn't want to speak up on that. So I wouldn't trust her with the Eighth Amendment either. So if she's not a good representative of the Second Amendment, not a good representative of the Fourth Amendment, and not a good representative of the Eighth Amendment, that's three. That's 3 of your 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights. Now let's take it a little bit farther, shall we? Your First Amendment right. So it's no secret that a lot of the people on that side of the aisle won't want to silence people out there either. Okay? They don't want people going out and telling the truth. And they try to use smear tactics and everything else. Now, Nancy Pelosi may not be Hillary Clinton, but if you expect me to believe she's not in the same inner circles and in bed with Hillary Clinton, not literally, but you get my point. She's running with the crowd. She's part of that whole, corporate agenda, okay? And look what the corporate Democrats are doing to someone like Tulsi Gabbard because she speaks out against their corruption, because she speaks out against their BS. So they then want to try to pass these reforms that target what you can say, what you can't say, blah, 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 blah. So she's really not even a good representative of your First Amendment either, if we want to get down to brass tacks here. Now, we could sit here and keep going back and forth about this for a while, but you could easily make the case she does not have good intentions for at least 3 of your 10 Bill of Rights, and maybe even 4 of your 10 Bill of Rights. If we go with 4, that's 40% of your entire Bill of Rights Nancy Pelosi has attacked in some way, shape, or form. And she's the leader of the Democratic Party who just passed this extension. And how much of this have you heard on the news outlets today? Go online and look it up. And you can only find the news article through one website. I haven't found anything from CNN. I haven't found anything from MSNBC. I haven't found anything from Fox News, CBS. And rest assured, if you hear anything about it from these news networks, it will be minimal. It will not be very detailed. It will be the bare minimum information possible. They may spend a minute or 2 on it. And then they'll be right back to impeachment, quid pro quo, bribery, impeachment, blah, 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 blah. Because that's all they want to talk about. They don't want to talk about the stories that matter. And that's why YouTube channels like this one, we have to do the job for the mainstream media. Channels like this, channels like Jimmy Dore, channels like Secular Talk, and others, okay? The Jimmy Dore and Secular Talk are not the only ones that I listen to, but I listen to them two of the most, okay? Every now and then I'll tune into Tim Black. I like Tim Black pretty good too. Just to throw another one out there for anyone who is open, goes around trying to find different channels. But there's a lot of other good channels out there who cover these things too, and that's why it's important for channels like this to keep doing this thing, because you're not going to get this stuff through the mainstream media because they want to keep that blindfold on you, the American people. And meanwhile, Congress and Capitol Hill are secretly going behind your back, passing extensions on things that target your rights, and the mainstream media doesn't want to inform you.